Hello. Today we're finally gonna actually do that Rickenbacker that I said I was gonna do yesterday. Just got tied up in some things and got started kind of late. I wanted to do the Rickenbacker on stream. That was like kind of a big deal, I guess, in some way, shape, or form. I'm like, oh, I want to use this instrument for this stream.
This Rickenbacker bass that, honestly, it's been here a little bit too long for just a quote-unquote setup, but it actually has a couple things wrong with it. So I need to, one, diagnose what's going on electronically, because if you can see in the video, there's two outputs, and so there's one that's actually there and one that's not there. And so there's like some classic wiring tricks that people have done to like make this just more reminiscent of just an SG style of wiring. So it's kind of weird on this one right now. It's kind of set up volume, technically I guess tone, but this one does absolutely nothing, and this one doesn't affect the bridge pickup at all. So it's just a tone knob that affects this, which I'm like, that's kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie. So if you really think about it, if you're a bass player sweeping below, so it actually kind of makes sense to put your volumes down here. And up here is like where you want to tinker and dial, because you can't really do quick swells with all these. Where you do your quick swells are right below. So you're like, okay, I get it. This is like a total utilitarian build. I guess. And Rickenbackers have been set up a lot of weird ways. But yeah, they used to have, or not used to have, they have two outputs. They're trying to do like a mono and a stereo kind of setup thing. And it's just set up to go full mono, which I'm all about that. This setup is absolutely punk rock as hell, because you've got your like kind of tone settings and everything up here. And then this is your main like volume button, is this bridge pickup volume. And you're like, tone down. In the show, that just eliminates feedback. Got like no feedback. It's just chilling. You can do little like, and then all the way down, all the way up. You've got gain pumping into the amp. It's just, yeah, it's a total punk rock setup. So got our headstock view. Now, of course, it looks all bare. It should look all, Rickenbacker-y, but took that off. And yeah, that's what the headstock looks like without, without the cover. So the goal here is we're going to do just like a typical setup that we would do on a bass. These strings are brand new. On a guitar, I'd be like, screw you, I'm going to cut these and I'm going to put new strings on it. But on a bass, customer tells me they just put new strings on it. These strings, if the customer takes care of them, could last maybe like 8-9 months. Probably even push it out to a year. I wouldn't stretch them out to a year. I like to change bass strings every like 6 or 7 months. If I've got a set of flat wounds on it, I straight up run it for a year. But I do take care of my strings, and that's really what affects all of that. So instead of cutting them, I'm going to remove them. Just get them kind of loose enough that I can just pop them out. So the whole point that we're gonna remove this for is because we want to gain access to the bar for the foam or the felt. I might even be able to do a faux felt kind of thing. I'm gonna experiment with it for a little bit. We'll see what happens. Let's see. Now, what I gotta do is unscrew this all the way. And I'm actually, you know what? I don't like dealing with, there is a washer and there's another washer. So I'm gonna set that actually in the bin. That bin. And so we've got our plate. Looks like that. These like big ol' saddle or bridge, but the inside is just pot steel, pot metal. with some kind of, lead style. It's all one piece. Saddle sink in, which I mean, that's pretty solid, but for something like this, instead of it being like so hollow.
From a bass player standpoint, these beefy saddles, they look like they would just carry all of the sustain in the world. But now, as a tech, digging, and I've seen this before, and don't get me wrong, there are ones that are solid on the inside, but yeah, that's just like, that's just okay. Yeah, these screws are a little rusty. One's kind of backed out, not kind of set right. So I'm gonna fix this guy up.
Little side step there. So yeah, inside of the bridge. So this guy is grounding right here. There's like big old ground wire, and so there's this like ridge, and it hits there, and that's what it's grounding on. So it's grounding on. Let's find the spot where it's actually touching. I'm trying to get, okay, so it's touching right about, yeah, that looks right. So it's touching right about there. That's our ground spot. Okay. I'm not going to change any of this, by the way. This isn't a modified job. But, hey, mental note, So we've got this plate. Yeah, let's work a piece of foam in there. So have a couple pieces of foam that would probably work for this job. Let's take a look. See, and this is dense. This is a very, very, very dense piece of foam. But if you see, it's actually cut out for that because you're supposed to have a nice thick piece of something, right? And it shouldn't be any wider than just where the strings are. So now let's kind of work it into the groove because I don't think it'll be too much for the strings. And if it is, we'll pop it off. I'll put a thinner piece, but I think it actually needs a pretty dense piece for this to actually work. I am almost positive of that because it is a deep cavity and it is dug out. So it'll require me to, I'll probably, honestly, because this stuff's like poking out, let's get a fresh razor blade. So this piece of foam, I cut it out. Here, I'll switch again.
So this piece of foam, I cut it out. It's pretty even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just shave right along the edge. And then I'm actually going to pop it out, stuff it in again the other way, and then shave it along the edge. And it'll give me this nice little taper because I did exactly the same. Otherwise, beforehand, it was just, a rectangle that I'd cut out. So let's shape this thing. So I'll pull out a fresh razor blade as opposed to pulling something out from my cutting pad. And let's just let's see if we can get this right. And we're going to do just kind of like a little chopping motion, We're just going to go up and down and trim. You see, and just like I thought, it wasn't as much material as I thought. Let's see. It's just the corners. So let's get this one. Doing this one deeper, and I'm going to do the other one deeper as well. As you could tell, I could change the angle that I'm attacking it to get my cut.
looks pretty good. I might actually not even flip it. I might just run it just like that. Because I think when I'm putting it on, it's this part, it's all submerged, and this is the deepest part, and I just want to make sure that there's not too much tension pushing up on this guy. You know?
If there's too much tension pushing up on here, too much, then it will basically fret out, quote unquote, there, and that will be the bridge spot, as opposed to the original saddle location, which is before it. This will be the new spot of intonation if it's too much tension there. So you don't want too much, but it is deep. You don't want a thin little piece.
That's probably pretty good. Okay, let's take a look at it. Oh, that's perfect. Oh, but these are all like poking up. Like, why are they poking up? Hold on. Oh, because this foam could have gone way more down. Okay, let's see. Oh, that's even better. Okay, cool. That's like riding just on the bottom. And then when I string it, I'll just raise it up just ever so slightly, and it'll be good. Let's razor blade. There's a little extra again. Perfect. Perfect fit. Cool. So now we got our foam. There we go. So, yeah, we've got our Rickenbacker. This is all kind of set up. Last we left it, I put the foam on here, and I've got the bridge just waiting, and so we got to put the screws in. And I had these screws here I was going to put in, just kind of soaking and cleaning up. So now I'm just going to take these out. I'm going to kind of clean them up one by one, get some of that rust off. The way I'm going to do that is just take the steel wool, and I'm just going to run the thread a little bit on the steel wool, and dip it on the rag, run a little bit on the steel wool, then throw on the rag again. Repeat this process. Okay. They don't look too bad. Kind of cleaned up nice. There's always going to be that little bit of oxidation right there on the top there, but most of it rubbed off. Let's get these back on. Let's screw this guy back on here. I'm going to get kind of all the screws started, put them in their holes, and I'm going to leave that ground one for last. Get everything kind of stabilized, and when I'm doing that ground one, instead of stopping, I just want to run it all the way through. Okay, so this is the last one other than the ground. Just going to get that in, not tight, just, just getting it so that it's actually touching the bridge and it's metal on metal. And we're going to go around and just do all these as well. Then back to that original one, I'm just going to tighten it just a little bit. And now we're going to get that ground one. We're going to bring it back here. We're going to screw it in. It's going to be a little tougher because there's that little bit of wire there as resistance. And keep going. And we're going for snug. Okay, and then we'll move on to the next screw. Again, going for snug. Next screw. Next screw. Okay, original turn around. There we go. One little turn. You'll notice as you go through and tighten the screws, the ones that you previously tightened down, they're a little loose, and that's because the bridge is getting cinched down, and now you're getting a true result. So back to this. Get all these screws out. That one's kind of crooked and weird. I'll take a look at what's going on there. Let's take a look. How they got it wired up. All parts. So all of this was aftermarket, I guarantee it. That's an original switch. Yeah, this was the tone pot that I thought was doing nothing. When I had it plugged in, it seemed like it was doing nothing, but it's wired up to both of the volume. Oh my God, look at that. That ground looks awful. Oof. Oof. I'm gonna have to fix that. I'm gonna have to fix that. That's not cool. Yeah, I thought to look under here, and yeah, sure enough, it's like the crappiest ground. And so we got this wire over here for the single output. Said it's a stereo. Yeah, no, it is a stereo jack, but that's not. Okay. Yeah. So I see how this is wired. It's all wired to one output. It's really interesting. Okay, yeah. So this volume pot for the bridge pickup is actually wired through this one. So in theory, I'll check it later, but in theory, if I turn down this volume all the way down, this is like the true master volume, and this is the volume pot for the bridge pickup. So this is a volume pot for the neck pickup, but it's also a master. I'm going to check it out later, but I mean, as far as this wiring is telling me, like this is going to here, so this, and this is the main output, so, you know, that when you turn that master down, turn the rest of it down. Let's get that wire back in there. Okay, let's take it over to the electronics workbench. Let's see what we're looking at. So the bad ground is right here. This guy. It's all boogered up. The rest of it looks all factory, all like nice and melted, and then this is just like a booger stuck on top of another booger, stuck on top of another booger, and then somewhere down there is like the original factory solder. So I'm gonna unsolder all these grounds, and I'm going to solder them properly to the potentiometer. I mean, I'm sure they're working okay right now, but like, I don't think it's that good. And I think anybody that like knows how to solder would agree when they look at something like this. This is pretty bad. Get our solder ready, and our iron is hot and ready to go. And so I'm going to first, I'm just going to get the top one hot. Just going to get that one to just kind of give up. It's going to take a little while because it's literally, they're just stacked up on top of each other. And not in a manner where like the solder was off and they just like put it on top and they put the solder on top. It was like already a soldered joint So they soldered a joint to that soldered joint, and then they soldered another joint on top of that soldered joint, and then so on and so forth. So we got one off so far. This one got so hot that this plastic melted over here. So I'm going to set this wire aside. We know that they're all going to be going to the ground, so I'm not going to have any confusion here. So let's get this next one. Some tweezers. Okay, this one, let's get it out. What else? This one's totally melted too. All of this is melted. It's pretty gnarly. I'm gonna put new shielding on all of this, or shrink wrap on this one. Okay, so this one used one wire to connect that, and I guess that was probably original, and it looks real clean and all that, but like someone just took that joint and soldered a bunch of stuff on top of it, and it melted that wire, and that's why it's all messed up and gunky. So new wire. That's my and there's enough solder right there. That is just like too much. I'm gonna leave this one here. Let me just make sure it's like in there good. I just want to make sure it's a good connection, and I want to give it some up here, which I feel weird adding more solder, but I mean I am up here. Here we go. That's where you really want it, and it should look like that, like kind of just spread out on there. So I'm gonna cut it. Here, I'll grab some cutters. I'm gonna cut it right here, because that is the connection to the original switch. And I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna solder down this one and this one, the connections to the original switch. So let's get those lined up and put these down now. It's still hot. Okay. Okay, let's get that ready. And let's get some solder ready. I don't think I'm going to need much solder, but we'll see what happens. It's like, it's so much of it there already. You have to do them separately. Okay. Let's get just a little bit of solder on there just so it starts getting a reaction. Okay, there we go. I want a reaction in the whole neighboring area. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, I'll leave that there. I don't care. Okay. A real quick setup turned into a whole other thing. I was like, oh, it's just missing some foam too. So let's get this piece off. Which actually, you know, I'm just going to clip it because it is, I already know it's like daisy chained around, so I'm just going to clip that off. Get rid of that altogether. Okay, So that's gone. And so you get it hot and you have it there, but that's not quite when the reaction happens. You kind of wait until the puddle kind of starts to spread, and that means that the heat has been distributed and that the solder is actually making its joint. And you see it spread right there. It's nice and clean. Nice and clean. And that's how you get a nice ground on the pot. And so now we're going to do this side. I thought I was going to do, what's it called? Shrink wrap, but I ended up having to just use a whole new wire in general. Try and get this guy here. And this guy too. I think so. Let's not burn ourselves. That's like a match made in heaven right there. Perfect. Yeah, it is kind of not a perfect fit, and I see why that screw was super crooked. But that's what you get with an all parts pickguard. So you gotta kind of like shave it a little bit here and there to make it fit right. Right here, let's flip it over to the other table. Oh, let's test it. Yeah, let's test it. While I'm here, make sure it's still, everything's still working. Yeah. There we go. Okay. Got these strings on. Okay, let's just slip them in and get this whole process started. So I'm really curious of this setup and how it's going to turn out. I needed a truss rod adjustment, I needed a saddle adjustment, needed everything, but also the electronics weren't working great, so, you know, I want to make sure all that's working, and good thing I checked, because honestly it was janky as hell. It was a really good thing I checked. All those grounds were messed up. Or, well, all the grounds on the one pot, the main pot that goes out, were all messed up. Last one. Now, I like that he did this short here. Actually, I should have had the headstock view for that, but yeah. Like, I like that he kind of, like, kept the string short. These are the strings he had on here. And so he changed them himself, and that goes to show that he knows how to change the strings. But I'm probably going to tell him, like, when he picks it up, that he probably cut the strings a little bit too short, and that he should do them more like he did, like this G string and the low E string. This one's a little bit too short. This one's pretty good. This one's a little short. This one's pretty good. So, you know, maybe just a little extra slack would go a long way. We've done a lot of cleanup on this base. Let's see, our saddle height is probably super high. Truss rod adjustments super necessary. In fact, this is way too tight. Take all this tension off. And so we're going to tighten up that truss rod, and we're going to loosen that saddle simultaneously. Let's get this. And so the truss rod adjustment on a Rickenbacker is the exact same as a Taylor guitar. And actually, we should talk about Rickenbacker truss rod real quick. So some people have different speculations of how it works, but it is just as simple as two truss rods. It's in their thought process in building was that the bass side and the treble side might have different varying tensions and stuff. But in reality, with modern strings, everything's kind of balanced tension. So really, on a 4-string, one truss rod would have been fine. Their claim is that truss rod's not very strong, which, I mean, to their credit, the one that they're using is very tiny. So when you're making adjustments, you kind of want everything to be pretty even, Steven. So if you move one a little bit, you move the other one an equal amount of that little bit, and kind of try to keep track of it, because there's no marker there telling you, oh, this one's been moved a little bit more than the other one. So before I started this whole project, I loosened up both of them, just making sure, one, that they're working, and two, that they're both loosened up. And then I brought them both up to about an equal amount of torque, where I just got it to where it's touching the plate, and maybe about like a quarter turn after that. So I knew that they were kind of at an equal state from the beginning. So I did my adjustments accordingly. We're going to adjust this saddle. It's way too high. So let's see. I think it's this size. Yep, there we go. So we're going to adjust this saddle because it's just way too high. We'll get it to a more playable height. And then I'm going to raise the foam, which I'm actually excited about. Adjustment. Oh, wow. Yeah, pretty bad. Okay, so let's loosen it all up again, because I don't really want to adjust the truss rod while there's a bunch of tension on the strings. So we're just going to take that tension off. But saddle-wise, it looked pretty good. So let's do a quarter turn. And another quarter turn. And then let's do like another 1/8 of a turn just to line it up again. Okay. So that was a big adjustment. Let's tune it up again and see what happens. Okay, that's probably the best I'm going to get this.
For now, thank you for watching. This was Dr. Strings, and I will see you potentially later if I feel like I can stream again. I probably will. I probably will stream again. Hopefully. I'm crossing my fingers. Oh, I'm crossing my fingers so hard that I'm going to stream again. Okay, thank you. Bye.